Pramod, you can direct to Virendra to start.
Yeah, sir. Sure. Yes. Good evening, everyone. At this 84th Sunday Sahityik Satsang, I would like to invite Dr. Virendra Turkar, convener of East Maharashtra Forum and event coordinator of this month, to welcome the guest and introduce the Master of Ceremonies. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Pramod sir. Namaste and good morning to one and good evening to all. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to this 84th Sunday Sahityik Satsang being organized by iSPELL India. The topic of today's webinar is Textual Questions in Early Shakespeare Texts. This event is an extremely special event for all of us because we have just celebrated great William Shakespeare's birth anniversary yesterday. And just following that, we decided to devote today's Sunday Sahityik Satsang to William Shakespeare. He has said that what's in name, but the name of William Shakespeare is everything for us. His name itself suggests something which is so large and which is so vast that even if we spend our whole life to understand him, his ideas, his thoughts, his views, his literature, it will be insufficient for us. Such a great personality, William Shakespeare, has impressed number of people, distinguished personalities across the globe. And today we are really fortunate to have our today's webinar devoted to such a great personality, to such a great man, great writer, the king of literature, we can say. Though we belong to India, but I would like to here say that people across the world get impressed by the lines of his writing. We people also keep quoting him at different times in our life. In this way, he has impressed us. He has impressed almost the people of every country. Such is the impact of this great writer, and today we are really lucky to have today's webinar as an opportunity to listen to the resource person of today's event who will speak on Shakespeare. So friends, or iSPELL India, the journey of iSPELL India started in a critical period dominated by corona pandemic, with the intent to bring the literarians, researchers, teachers, students, and the lovers of English and English literature on one digital platform where we were unable to contact each other personally.
Virendra, muted. You are muted. Please unmute.
Virendra, you are muted.
Yeah.
To come together, this forum, this iSPELL India was established with the motto to facilitate, to elevate. And really, iSPELL India is doing well. The 84th Sunday Sahityik Satsang, today organized by us, iSPELL India, underlines the fact. So friends, Today, I would like to welcome, as I said in the beginning, good morning to one. Yeah, the very, very special, a very reputed personality, Dr. Lara Hansen Morse, ma'am, who is from University of Nevada, Reno, USA. We are really honored by her presence over here on this platform as a resource person. And when we go through her bio note, we realize that she has devoted her entire academic life to the study of William Shakespeare and his works. So, such a well known personality, one who is familiar with A to Z of William Shakespeare, such a renowned personality we have today with us as a resource person. We are really fortunate to have her with us here. Ma'am, I again welcome you to our today's event. I would also like to heartily welcome the resource person of today's webinar, Devarshri Chakravarti ma'am. She is an assistant professor from Government Madhavrao Sapre College, Pendra Road, Chhattisgarh. I'm also happy to welcome here Dr. G.A. Ghansham sir, the founder and general secretary of iSPELL India. And it is only because of his cooperation and support today we have organized this special webinar on William Shakespeare. I would also like to welcome here Anupama Ohra ma'am, the president of iSPELL India, Pramod Dhengde sir, IT coordinator of iSPELL India, Dr. Yogesh Sarode, president of East Maharashtra Forum, all the respected EC members of iSPELL India, all the members of various forums of iSPELL India, and all the dear participants. Friends, here I'm happy to introduce Dr. Shweta Sur ma'am, who is the master of ceremony of today's webinar. Shweta Sur is currently engaged as a lecturer of English under Humanities and Social Sciences Department, Assam Downtown University. She has
Virendra,
earned her master degree in English
Virendra,
from
I think
Yes,
she is
sir.
not here. I think she is not here. You can call Professor Lara to start.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. So, friends, it's a matter of great pleasure and pride for all of us that today we have a very reputed and renowned personality with us as a resource person, Dr. Lara Hansen Morse, who is an instructor at the University of Nevada, Reno. Lara received her doctorate at the University of Nevada, Reno in 2014. Her work centers on textual scholarship, specifically focused on research on the Shakespeare First Folio. She was the principal contributor to the Shakespeare's First Folios, a descriptive catalog. Eric Rasmussen and Anthony West, eds 2012. Her dissertation Between the Sheets, the use of paper evidences in bibliographic reconstruction of the Shakespeare First Folio, uses the watermark and uncorrected page data collected the descriptive catalog to posit the conditions in the Jaggers print shop. Her, as I have already told you, that she is devoted to the study of William Shakespeare's books, his works, and she has done a lot in that area. And we are very lucky to have with us today such a great personality. So here I would like to take an opportunity to invite here Dr. Lara Hansen Morse ma'am to deliver her lecture on today's topic.
Well, thank you very much. Oh, sorry.
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the honor of being invited to share this event with iSPELL India. and I'm really excited about this topic, and I think yeah, I hope you are as well. Let me go ahead and share the presentation.
Yes, it's visible.
All right. So the title of my presentation today is Textual Questions in Early Shakespeare Texts. I am going to I want to make sure that I do not take anything for granted here. I'm not exactly sure everyone's level of expertise, and so I apologize in advance if I'm going over things that are common knowledge or elementary. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as we move through these textual issues. The reason why we study these textual issues and the reason why we go back to these early printed texts is because they present a unique challenge to editors. When creating a modern edition, there are very, very many decisions to be made as far as the efficacy, the veracity of the actual text, and the way to try to get back to maybe what Shakespeare himself intended the text to be, or whether maybe there's some revision that was done either by William Shakespeare himself or by his friends in the company at the Globe. These are all kinds of questions that we can't really answer. So we only have the evidence of the early modern text to go by. Excuse me. When we talk about the most famous book in the world, the most studied book in the world for the last, well, nearly 400 years, or will have its 400th birthday next year, is the Shakespeare First Folio. The first time Shakespeare's plays were collected and printed in one single volume. It includes 36 plays, half of which had never been seen in print before, which is a key, which is sort of a key piece of information, because if we didn't have plays like The Tempest and Macbeth, which had never been seen in print before, it's possibility we might have lost them to history. So the fact that they're preserved in the First Folio is in 18 of them appear there is quite an interesting piece of information. The folio the folio format itself was a pretty well, it was an audacious format to print play text in. If you're familiar with the printing process, you start with a sheet of paper, and with a folio, you fold it one time, giving you 2 leaves and 4 pages per sheet. And the reason why it's an audacious sort of way to print a play text is that this format is usually preserved for really important books like Bibles, books like law books, because this is a very expensive process, and you're using far more sheets of paper, which were a pretty expensive commodity at the time, to print a play text. It would be like taking it would be like taking a script of your favorite TV show and having it printed in a beautiful gilt edge page book, and then binding it with a gorgeous leather binding or something like this. So this was quite the thing. The only time that play texts had been printed in this format prior to Shakespeare's first folio was Ben Jonson's folio in 1616. And so, not to be outdone at the passing of their friend in 1616, Shakespeare's friends in the Playhouse decided to collect the play texts and get them all printed, just like Ben Jonson, who was Shakespeare's great rival. The first folio was a valued book ever since the time of its printing. The sellers of the first folio, they sold the first folio for a pound a piece, and a pound at that time in London was about how much a regular craftsman would probably make in an entire year. So the only people really who could afford the first folio were wealthy, privileged individuals, and they had them bound beautifully, and they took a prize spot in their libraries, and that tradition still maintains true through today. The last first folio that went on sale a year or so ago auctioned at around $10 million. So it is quite a valuable book. Let's see. Okay, so the people who probably could afford to buy a single play text, if you were more of modest means or in the middle class, were the Quarto editions. So if you have a folio that is one sheet folded once, a Quarto was one sheet folded twice. So that means you were able to get more pages for a single sheet of paper. These Chordos were for individual plays. Sometimes the individual plays were bought and bundled together, but you could go to the London the booksellers at St. Paul's Square and pick up a Quarto. Right now, fast forward nearly 400 years, Chordos are rare and pretty valuable. They're certainly more valuable now than they were back then. It's kind of an analogous reference might be that the Chordos were like the cheap paperbacks of the time. They weren't very expensive at the time, but because they weren't valued as objects, because they were, again, sort of like a paperback, they didn't last. And so if we have the value of the folio of the existing Quartos are quite high. For example, there's only two first Chordos of Hamlet, and interestingly enough, one lives at the British Library, the other one lives at the Huntington Library in the U.S., and both of them are missing a page or a leaf, I should say. Both of them are missing a leaf. So if you're doing intense study on this particular Quarto, you actually have to consult both of those artifacts to be able to piece together whatever your academic question is. The real value of the Quartos is because they were printed, many of them were printed prior to the first folio. We think that perhaps that these Quartos represent a record of the play text as Shakespeare would have intended. Perhaps these Quartos were printed straight from the author's manuscript. Another theory is that these Quartos were printed from the Playhouse manuscripts. That is to say, this was the documents that the Playhouse used to inform when certain props went on the stage, or where where the actors needed to stand and so on. So these are the early modern texts that we are talking about. The first folio and then the many quartos. Oh, incidentally, as people who might be interested in studying how popular a particular play was across the population, the number of quartos that get that are printed and then reprinted give us some indication on how popular a particular play was. For example, Richard III enjoyed 8 printings in Quartos. So this was so popular among the buyers of this quarto that it made it financially viable to keep reprinting these. And so I think this is a good place for us to start. Again, as I mentioned, the quarto version are from Shakespeare's manuscript. Some bodies of scholarship will call this manuscript Shakespeare's foul papers, or they think that they're more literary than what we see in the folio, as opposed to the folio version of the plays, which are considered more quote unquote theatrical. Perhaps they have more additions, emendations, revisions that made these plays more suitable to a performance setting rather than just printing. There are some early quartos that scholars will call bad quartos. These quartos are often much shorter than the more accepted quartos. We think that they might have been stolen or pirated. Another theory is that they might have been memorial reconstructed. That is to say, somebody would be sitting in the audience and actually either making quick notes, or they were the actors themselves who were perhaps disgruntled or were trying to make a buck or something like this, and then trying to recreate the text from their memory. There's some evidence, for example, in the Hamlet first quarto, that some of the lesser players that open the play, who are standing guard, that these characters, or that the actors that play these characters might have tried to replicate the entire play just from their memories, because their parts are perfect, whereas some of the other parts of the play are not so perfect. In the famous "To Be or Not to Be" speech of Hamlet in the first quarto, so the line goes, "To be or not to be, that is the question," right? So in the first quarto, the line is to be or not to be. There's the point. So that's a little bit of a different take on that very famous line. There's a body of scholarship that sees the quarto texts as early drafts, that folio texts are the revisions, again, either by Shakespeare himself or the company. Imagine, if you will, the Hemmings and Condell, and maybe some of Shakespeare's other fellows in the playhouse saying, "Oh, hey, Will, we're losing everyone in the fourth act. People are falling asleep or leaving. We need to shorten this up." And so this is actually what we see in the folio text of Hamlet, is the beginnings and endings of very long speeches being preserved, while some of the material in the middle of these long speeches being removed. So that's kind of fun. Another thing that might account for differences from edition to edition or from Quarto to Folio might be the errors that get introduced in the print house. Printing, even though it's a mechanical art, it still is a very human activity. And so pulling all the different letters to form a line, which you'll want to know is upside down and backwards as you're setting it in a composition stick, is still open to human error. And there also might be the possibility of a proofreader in the print house saying, no, that doesn't make any sense. As I read the manuscript, this is really the reading. So there's every chance for a different reading being introduced to a text that has nothing to do with what Shakespeare would have wanted or what the company gave to the printers. So that's a whole nother realm of diving into the evidence to see what it actually shows us. Okay, so this is a portion of the preliminaries. It's the letter of the Shakespeare First Folio. This is a letter to the readers by Hemmings and Condell, who were the principal shareholders of the Globe when after Shakespeare's death, and they were responsible for delivering the actual text to the Jaggard's print house. So they note in this letter that we pray that you don't envy his friends. It's Will's friends, that's them. The office of their care, the plays, and pains, who have collected and published them, and so to have published them, as where before you were abused and diverse stolen and surreptitious copies, maimed and deformed by the frauds and stealths of injurious impostors. So this is them saying, hey, we're going to set the record straight here. You guys might have had the opportunity to read plays that were printed that were not authorized by us, but these are going to be the true copies, and not maimed and deformed by frauds. So this is sort of fun. One thing that editors, one thing that has happened in the editorial tradition is, so if editors have to make choices, do you go with a Quarto text or do you go with a Folio text? And what's very difficult and tricky in all of this is, what if you're reading the Quarto text and something doesn't seem to add up? Maybe a metric line doesn't measure out quite right. Maybe there's a break in logic somehow. Maybe the Folio text can help you, or vice versa. Maybe if there's something in the Folio text that doesn't seem to add up, maybe the Quarto text actually can inform your reading of the Folio text. For a good long tradition of editorial practice, editors had just decided to basically abdicate their responsibility in making a choice and making educated choices, and just throwing it all together. So that is to say, if there were texts in the Quarto that weren't in the Folio, then you just jam them all together and go with the idea that the more the Shakespeare, the better, and just throw them all together. In 2006, editors Ann Thompson and Neil Taylor kind of blew the top off of this whole theory by producing their ardent edition of Hamlet in two separate volumes. One volume is the text of 1603 and 2000 and 1623. So that's the first Quarto, which is considered a bad Quarto, and the folio text all bound up in one volume. In the other volume is the second Quarto, the Q2 text, and it is it's thicker. It has much more material in it. It has much more introductory matter, and is, if you're going to have both of these texts, this Q2 text seems to have more meat, and is definitely privileging the that Quarto text. And so even though they made the bold decision to go ahead and publish all three early editions, they went ahead and privileged the second Quarto, which is fine. It's a different enterprise than what previous editors had done with just throwing everything together in a big salad bowl. But you know, there's still questions and limitations as to even doing that. And yeah, so that's an interesting thing. Okay, so here's another example of what faces an editor. This is Romeo and Juliet. This is the first Quarto of 1597, and the second Quarto that came out just 2 years later. And I just wanted to direct you to these lines. Well, there's a few lines actually. Let's see. So Juliet in the second Quarto says, well, let's see. Let's start with the first folio. Romeo says to Juliet, this is them saying, this is their saying goodbye in the balcony scene. Romeo says, "Sleep well upon thine eyes, peace on thy eye, or I would that I were sleep and peace of sweet to rest." So that's great. But in the second Quarto, Juliet gets that first line, "Sleep dwell upon thine eyes," and then Romeo follows up with, "Would I were sleep." And then this business of the gray-eyed morn, and I mean the second folio text just completely negates these three lines, which basically indicates he's going to be going to Friar Lawrence's cell to arrange for them to be married and all of this. And then in the second Quarto, the gray-eyed morn is the friars. This is the friars line. It's actually just repeated. So is this a print house error, or was this something that the author intended? I'm kind of hard to see that this is what the author intended. But if they're working from a manuscript, which might have had some areas that were crossed out and maybe some arrows or whatever, it might be kind of hard to suss out what Shakespeare actually wanted and who he wanted this gray-eyed morn line to belong to. In the folio, what they've done is retain some of the Q2 formatting, but still repeats this error of the repetition. So again, what does an editor do? This is just the same example where you can see it very clearly across the entire spectrum of these editions. All right. So moving along. This is another very interesting textual crux. This is Othello. And he has this is Othello's. This is after Othello has killed Desdemona. Sorry, spoilers if you haven't made it to the end of Othello. But this is this line. He's lamenting that he has killed the most precious thing to him, and he says, like the base Indian threw his pearl away, richer than all his tribe. It's hard to know whether he means Indian in the sense of Native American, and the tie back to a tribe might support that reading, or in the folio reading, it says, and it's first of all, it's a parenthetic sort of addition to this sentence, but he says, like the base. Now, is this, if you recall, there's no J in the Latin language, and so they would use I's in place of J's, and we see that practice retained in some of the early printing. And you can see here this word jealous here is there's a capital I here, so maybe this is a J, and so maybe this reading isn't Indian but Judean. And again, the Hebrew tribes would be an interesting tie back here. If this reading was, I mean, and it's possible that this U might just be an upside down N. It's super hard. It's super hard to tease these issues out. But if you are a modern editor, which one do you choose? Because the reading's going to be completely different, and how you gloss it down at the bottom of the page to try to clear it up for your reader is also becomes an interesting challenge. But you have to make a choice, because in print, you can't just put both of them in. And you can't go into long explanations as to why it would be one or the other at the base of the page. So what do you do with this? So if we look at Hamlet, Hamlet in particular has the second quarter of Hamlet has 4,056 lines. And the folio is noticeably shorter with 3,907 lines. And then you get a text that is much shorter. And again, I've characterized Q1, as many of my colleagues do, as a bad quarto or as just a very early quarto. And it was only just, relatively recently discovered. So it's only been part of the conversation since 1823. We study title pages in Shakespeare textual studies because this was, title pages were used to sell these texts in the booksellers' stalls, and the only reason that you would buy, if you already had purchased a first edition quarto of Hamlet, why would you buy a second edition? And the only reason is if it was advertised on the title page as newly imprinted and enlarged to almost, as it was, according to the true and perfect copy, again, claiming more authenticity than perhaps this first one. So that it's super fun. the Hamlet's first soliloquy in the this is another dilemma for editors. Hamlet's first soliloquy reads in the first quarto, "Oh that this too much grieved and sallied flesh would melt to nothing." Okay, in the second quarto, Hamlet says, "Oh that this too sallied flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew." And in the folio text, it says, "Oh that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew." So what do we choose here? Sallied exists here and in here, but then when we get to the folio, someone has decided to read the manuscript not with an A as in sallied, but with an O, because does it make much more sense that, I mean, sallied would indicate something that is, I don't know, dirty or maybe corrupt, maybe, versus just something that was solid flesh that needs to melt. And it's an interesting reading either way. But again, an editor has to make a choice. There's a in Q2, Laerte says, "Thus wide I'll open my arms, and like the kind life-rendering pelican, repass them with my blood." And then in the folio it says, "And like the kind life-rendering politician, repass them with my blood." Okay, so if we were trying to figure out whether politician or pelican had the most authority, we might turn to the first folio to see if it can give us any help. And it doesn't mention either one when he's talking about reconciling blood or anything, or even the mention of blood. So this is kind of also an interesting crux. By the way, this idea of the life-rendering pelican, there's really no biological evidence of this, I guess, but there was a long-held belief that pelicans, if they were desperate to feed their young, would go ahead and take their own flesh and feed their young in desperate cases. And so I've included this picture here to indicate that. But a life-rendering politician, that's definitely an interesting idea. And again, there's no real way to know if this was a way to, I don't know, ingratiate the publishers or Hemmings and Condell or any of the people involved with the printing of the first folio, to perhaps a patron who was funding the enterprise or not. It's just you just don't know. So Hamlet's fourth soliloquy only exists in the Q2. Hamlet, the how all occasions do inform against me, as he's watching Fortinbras and his forces marching, and he's lamenting that he has not taken action when he had the opportunity, but this is the only place it lives. So if you were going to say, no, I'm going to go ahead and do a straight up folio, I'm going to privilege the folio and I'm going to use just folio readings, then you have to make a decision whether this scene is important, if it's going to be important to your particular edition. What does a multi-text Hamlet mean today? I've So there's various projects underway that have been there's projects underway, but there's also past projects which have meant to have all three versions of Hamlet printed in parallel, so you can see, you have a visual representation of how these texts interact. And then I've already showed you what the Arden 3 did, what Thompson had chosen to do. So I guess that that pretty much leads us to just asking questions about what do you do with all these various authoritative texts that have every claim to authenticity than one to the other. So so what do you do with all of this information? How do you approach a text that has been conflated in an older edition that has been much valued? And then how do you approach these texts when you do know that there are multiple versions out there? There are interesting questions. I think that's about the time that I was allotted for the discussion. I think, are we opening it up for question and answer at this point?
Yep, Dr. Viren.
Hello.
Dr. Viren, you can take up.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. It was a phenomenal presentation from your side. And the way you explained your minor things, it shows that you have really studied all these things so carefully, so minutely, painstakingly. Thank you very much, ma'am, for such an informative presentation on the topic. Friends, now the stage is open to all the participants. If you have any question in your mind, you can ask ma'am freely. Or I can check if there are any question in chat box.
Hello, can I? Hello?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Please ask, ma'am. Yes. Pushpa, ma'am.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
ma'am.
no, I would like to know whether Shakespeare's plays are enacted even now in the theatre in London. Are they troops existing as it was before? Are they very active, and is it alive and kicking even now? I would like to know about that.
Yes, thanks. That was a good question. Yes, at the Globe Theatre is on the south banks of the Thames in London, has been reconstructed, and
Okay.
they try very hard to perform the plays as they would have. They don't use, for example, they don't use electronics, microscopes and whatnot, or sorry, microscopes, microphones. And so they project out to the crowd. They have people standing in front of the stage as the groundlings would have back in Shakespeare's time. There's also a theater in the Royal Shakespeare Company in Stratford called the Sam Wanamaker Theater, and it is only lit by candles.
Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you, ma'am. Yeah.
Ma'am, there is one more question. Very interesting question. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, yes. Asked by Dr. Gangadhar Wadle, sir. Ma'am, he asks whether date of birth and date of death of William Shakespeare is same.
That's the story. We know that we do know that he died on the 23rd, and using church documents from the Trinity Church in Stratford, they place his birthday on the 23rd as well.
Yeah. There is one more question. Okay, let me check in the. Ma'am, there is one more question from Nitu Kumari Gupta. How does the different versions of the same text either enrich or dilute its greatness?
Well, I think I think that knowing that studying the various versions gives us a clue as to one, the popularity of the play, that there was the contemporary public interests in the play, and we think that there might have been enough interest that would give us some indication that they were making modifications as the years went by, and I'm not sure exactly. I mean, I think the just the existence of the first folio is fairly impressive. The longevity of the surviving copies. So let me just step back for a second. There were 750 copies of the first folio printed in 1623. Over 230 of them exist now, and that's quite remarkable. Which just kind of shows you that they were pampered objects, prized objects for these 400 years. But as far as appreciating the plays themselves, it gives you one more layer of appreciation when you realize that there may be other readings for some of your most favorite passages. And when you realize that there might be a different word that might give you subtle nuance to understanding a character or a situation, I think that just lends to just a greater appreciation and definitely a layer of academic interest for studying the plays.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, here there is one more question from Kishori Patel. How many ways did Shakespeare spell his name?
We have a few examples of Shakespeare's autograph. He didn't give out autographs at the stage door or anything like that, but we have his signature on a few legal documents, like when he bought a property in London while he was there, while he bought his what's called the new place in Shakespeare or in Stratford, his new house, when he signed his will, where he willed his the second best bed to his wife. We have about 2 or 3 different spellings of his name in his own hand.
Can I come in? Can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Welcome, sir.
Hi, Dr. Lara. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for that wonderful scholarship and the taking us through the many variations of the folio and the quarto editions. My question to you is that, has it at any point in time, with so many versions and variations being found and being expurgated, and has it made any substantial difference to Shakespearean criticism, right from, let's say, from the time of Coleridge to A.C. Bradley to even Stephen Greenblatt? And if there is one, can you point out one specific example?
I'm sorry, let me just make sure I understand a specific example of
the variations of the many versions of, let's say, Hamlet, and the criticism, the body of criticism that has been done in the interpretation of, let's say, the several folios and quartos of Hamlet.
Gotcha. Yes. Well, for example, I think I might be getting the author wrong, but I think it's James Shapiro's Shakespeare and the Jews, where he's tracing Shakespeare's treatment of Jewish culture. I mean, the obvious example would be Shylock in Merchant of Venice, but the not so obvious one might be this folio example of Othello when he's talking about the base Judean, and showing that I mean, showing that layer of otherness, trying to lessen the status of the Jew in society, and so there's some of that criticism, but you really need to actually latch on to that particular reading of that line if you're going to include that that bit in your scholarship or your argument. So that's one example that might lend to a different critical approach to a particular reading.
Thank you so much.
There is one more question, ma'am. From Lal Saheb Patil. Which editions do the contemporary dramatic companies in the UK and US use?
Oh, there's actually, it really depends on what the dramaturg is feeling and what the director, what story the director really wants to tell, or what kinds of points of emphasis that a director wants to put on things. They will consult the dramaturg to try to tease some of these ideas out. I'm laughing because I'm thinking of a particular story of Ian McKellen coming to a table reading. He was going to play King Lear, and he for the RSC. This was about, oh gosh, probably about 10-12 years ago, and he was asked which one he preferred, and not even getting into the scholarship or anything, he just said, which one's shorter? And they said, oh, it's the folio is shorter, and he goes, well, let's go with that one. So that's funny.
Okay.
Yeah, it really just depends. It really just depends on what. See, so I hope what my presentation brings to mind is that the editor has a lot of choices to make. I mean, first and foremost, but this is where we see an editor actually performing. If a director and a dramaturg have to make decisions for performance, an editor has to make decision for the performance that you see on paper, on the page. And so that's, there's all manner of questions to answer and decisions to make.
Thank you very much, Lara ma'am, for answering all these questions in a very friendly manner. Thank you, ma'am. We have still some questions, but due to time protocol, we have to skip these questions. So friends, let's move on to next segment. Now I would like to introduce here today's chairperson, Dr. Devarshi Chakravarti ma'am, who is working as an assistant professor at Government Pandit Madhav Rao Sapre College, Pendra Road, Chhattisgarh. She has done her PhD on a study of hybridity and cultural.
Please continue. Please continue.
Okay, sir. Okay. She has done her PhD on a study of hybridity and cultural plurality in the selected novels of Salman Rushdie. She has published nearly 17 research papers so far in various reputed international national journals. She has also edited 4 books and published 1 collection of poetry. She has interest in reading, painting, writing. So today we have such a intelligent personality with us as a chairperson, Devarshi Chakravarti ma'am. May I invite Dr. Devarshi Chakravarti ma'am to express here her views. Devarshi ma'am, over to you.
Please unmute yourself.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Tukkar sir. I think whatever you said, all those things are way more an exaggeration than what truly I believe I possess. Thank you again. Today's session on textual questions in early Shakespeare texts by Dr. Lara Hansen-Morse was an experience that is quite unforgettable, because we often read Shakespeare related to drama. We have many of the background information, but the trivia, the kind of information and trivia that she has provided us regarding the various editions of Shakespeare's texts is remarkable. I think the entire session was really a very enlightening learning experience that will always be etched in our memory to come forth in the years. So if I sum up the session, I think when we started with all the information regarding the printing of the first folio or the quarters and what kind of text the first folio had, and the importance of the quartos as well, and how rare and valuable they are, I think it made us appreciate all those editions of Shakespeare. We have so much of information related to the plays of Shakespeare, the way it was printed, or why it is known as a folio and a quarto. And the main part of the session that Madam came forth was regarding the textual differences and the various opinions as to why these textual differences existed in all those editions. So there is the quarto version, which are more literary, and folio, which is more theatrical, and ma'am explained it so comprehensively and in detail regarding the epithet of bad quartos, why it is often said as that they are bad quartos, or perhaps they were stolen or recreated. So such very minute information and details related to each and every edition of Shakespeare's plays, the first quarto, the second quarto, and the number of quartos, how we can actually ascertain why, how we can ascertain that a certain play was popular by just looking forth towards the number of reprints that a particular play had. These are something that, as a scholar of Shakespeare, it is invaluable for our study, for our research. Ma'am gave various examples related to the differences in text that existed in these various quartos and the first folio. Such detailed examples like the famous line from Hamlet, to be or not to be, and the kind of difference that we have in the first quarto, the early drafts, which are also known as revisions, and why this textual experience errors can be there, which gives birth to these differences. Like they can be errors that have been committed while printing, or the choices that an editor has made. Like ma'am ended her lecture by giving such important place to the choice of an editor, because that is the decision that he has to make, which gives birth to these differences and the various versions that we have of the text of Shakespeare. So the examples that ma'am gave forth later on related to the various lines from Hamlet. And also, like I'm skipping one part, the term conflated texts, how it has come forth, and how people have believed. I think even today we believe that the more we have of Shakespeare, it's better. So how these conflated texts are there, and how when we are studying Shakespeare, we have to take all these things into consideration. And such examples that are really eye-opening related to the various versions from Quarto 1, Quarto 2 of Hamlet, from Romeo and Juliet, and the various lines that ma'am gave from Hamlet related to the Soliloquy, and such words means the entire session was given in such minute detail, each and every word that brings up the difference beautifully and exemplifies what is meant by these various versions were given by ma'am in a very comprehensive manner. And coming to the conclusion of the entire lecture, ma'am put up the questions that these differences, these various versions of the Prince of Shakespeare's plays brings forth, like how to decide which text to relate to, the authority of the text, as well as the approach that needs to be taken regarding these conflated texts and the past scholarship. So these questions are very important and very significant related to the study of Shakespeare's text. And I think summing up the entire lecture in just a few words is something which is quite impossible, because it was really something which we have to give time to ponder over it, because these are very poignant questions that we should think over and mull over, and it requires time and a lot of concentration. So ma'am, Lara ma'am, really thank you for this excellent lecture. It was an eye-opening lecture for many of us, because there are ways that Shakespeare can be taught, and there are ways it can be approached. And your approach has been one which has shown us how we can go into the deepest insights of Shakespeare and bring out all those details, because these minute details, these minute nuances are actually very important when we try to study Shakespeare and bring out a perspective of the text through our study and through our scholarship. Thank you so much, ma'am. And thank you, Tulkar sir. Tulkar sir.
Unmute.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Dr. Virendra, please unmute.
Thank you, Dr. Devarshi Chakravarti ma'am, for so nicely and excellently summing up the lecture delivered by Lara ma'am. And you have rightly said that she has definitely in a very minute manner described all the things. And you also expressed your personal view on the topic. Thank you very much, Devashri ma'am, for the same. And now I would like to invite here Dr. G.A. Ghansham sir for giving concluding remark and presenting the certificates to the key figures of the event. Dr. G.A. Ghansham sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Virendra. And good morning to Professor Lara, and good evening to all of you. Indeed, it was a great evening to celebrate the birthday of the Bard of Avon. And since yesterday we are doing that, we have celebrated it as Shakespeare's birthday. We have celebrated it as English Language Day. And also we have celebrated it as International Book Day. So entirely in that way, we are celebrating this particular day. 23rd and 24th, they have become a kind of the days for us to not only to celebrate and enlighten all of us, but at the same time to think and to rethink how Shakespeare can be made more and more relevant in these days. The person who has been relevant for ages together, the person who will be relevant in the years to come, is the person whom we have not only studied, understood, but still there are the hidden treasures which we haven't even seen or which we haven't even thought of. And today we have come across an enlightening kind of a lecture by Professor Lara. She has brought many of the new things which we haven't even come across, and even the texts, even the dramas, even the plays which she has shown, and the way of deliberation and the way she has presented the deepest knowledge on Shakespeare has made me to understand one thing. This is what we call research. The search is there, but once again, you have to go back and research. You have to go deep into the text. You have to go deep into the author. You have to go deep into the periphery, and then come to the nucleus to understand what the writer is, what the author is, and how the plays have been written, and what the writer or the playwright has been thinking when narrating these kinds of characters in his plays. So in that way, this particular lecture of today's has not only filled the mind with the full of knowledge, but at the same time, it was a sumptuous kind of a dish which has been given to us by Professor Lara. So Professor Lara, indeed, we are thankful on behalf of Indian Society for the Promotion of English Language and Literature, which is popularly known as iSPELL. And today you have not only spelled your views on Shakespeare, but we are spellbound on the platform of iSPELL. So for doing the honors, this is a token of gratitude and love from iSPELL. So keep yourself in contact with iSPELL, and iSPELL will really feel honored to be associated with you. And I do hope the other writers of the book will be on the platform of iSPELL soon, because I came in contact with you because of the editor of the book, and then I contacted the second person, then I got the third person on the platform of iSPELL. But I do hope those two people will be there on the platform of iSPELL soon. So thank you very much for doing the honors, and I really appreciate your gesture. Thanks a lot. This certificate is a token of gratitude and love to Dr. Devashri Chakravarti, who has summed up the event, being the chairperson. And indeed, it's a great task for the chairperson to listen to the resource person and then to formulate his or her own ideas and then to express it in front of the audience. So for doing this honor, this certificate is a token of gratitude to Dr. Devashri Chakravarti. Devashri, please accept it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I don't think I am actually suitable for that, but thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir.
Most welcome. This certificate goes to Dr. Virendra Turkar, who has led this month of April, wherein we have come across in literature, April is the cruelest month. But I always find April as the fruitful month, because this is the month wherein we get the fruit, which is known as the king of all the fruits, the mango. So the mango comes into the market of India because it's the month of April. And Virendra Turkar has made this entire month such a good month, wherein we started with the research, and then we started with various other nuances related to research, and then we went on doing various Sunday Sahityik Satsang, and today we have been here to listen to Shakespeare. So Virendra, for doing the honors and also for taking us towards a beautiful journey in the cruelest month of April, making it really fruitful. This certificate is a token of gratitude from iSPELL to you.
Sir, thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks a lot. And with this, I request each one of you to be there on another great event in the month of May, wherein we are going to have various speakers on partition literature. This entire month of May is being devoted to partition literature. So iSPELL is devoting every month on a particular theme or a particular topic. So the month of March was on Dalit literature. The month of April was on research, including Shakespeare, and the month of May is on partition literature. So Stay connected, stay tuned. Thank you very much, Professor Lara, for doing the honors. We are always highly obliged to you. And with all this, I conclude this session with the hope that coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success. So let all of us work together to make this world a beautiful world to live in. Thank you very much. Take care of yourself.
Sir, thank you very much, Dr. J. Ghansham sir, for expressing concluding remark and presenting the certificates. Thank you very much, sir. Now let's move on to the most important segment, I think, because here we get an opportunity to express our gratitude, sincere gratitude towards the key figures of the event. So firstly, I would like to take the opportunity to express my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Lara Hansen ma'am for presenting peerless presentation on such a topic on which we usually see that very few webinars are organized either in our country or across the globe. Thank you very much, ma'am, for coming up with such a nice topic. Thank you very much, ma'am. We are indeed indebted to you for the same. Then I would like to express my thanks to Dr. Devashri Chakravarti ma'am, who beautifully summed up the session and expressed her personal view on the topic. I would also like to thank Dr. J. Ghansham sir, the General Secretary and founder of iSPELL India, for being with us and presenting the certificates and offering his valuable view on today's session. Thank you very much, sir. I would like to say thanks to Dr. Anupama Ohra ma'am, the President of iSPELL India. I would like to here specially thank to Mr. Pramod Dhengde sir, who has consistently given his contribution in the organization of all the 4 events of this month. Sir, your contribution is extraordinary and it was very much helpful for us, without which I think it could not be possible for us to organize all these events so successfully. Thank you very much, Pramod Dhengde sir. I would also like to thank Dr. Ashok Sachdeva sir, Dr. Prasanta sir. I would also like to thank Dr. Yogesh Sarode sir, whose contribution has also been substantial in the organization of all these activities. Actually, it was his choice in the first 3 programs in which he suggested the resource persons. Thank you very much, Yogesh sir. And I would like to thank other EC members of the iSPELL India, especially Dr. Indrani ma'am, Dr. Shalini Yadav ma'am, Kshamta Chaudhary ma'am, and some members from East Maharashtra Forum, Lakshmikant sir, Bonde sir, Bajpayee ma'am, Mangesh sir, and other members of EMF, and all the other participants who today joined this program. We are very much thankful to you, because without your presence, this program couldn't be successful and graceful. So I thank that every person who has directly or indirectly helped us in the organization of all these activities in the month of April. Thank you very much, one and all, for your precious contribution. And here, with the permission of chairperson of the event, I declare